All right. If you are here for the very first time tonight, would you raise your hand for us? Raise your hand for us. Right in the back over here, right over here. Anybody else right over here? Let's give our visitors a welcome tonight. Amen. I don't know, do we still have the bags in the back, Cheryl? Do we still have the bags in the back? We don't? Go like this, I can't see. This or this? No. All right. Well, we owe you a visitor's bag, so next time you come, we'll have one. If you don't, we don't have one for you, it's my wife's fault. No, it's my fault. All right, let me give you a little bit in the news. You ready for it? So there's a lot of things going on. Let me tell you about the impeachment trial. How many of you saw any of it? How many of you missed it? You missed absolutely nothing. I want you to know that. Absolutely nothing. It's ridiculous. It's disgruntled employees that are trying to go against their boss, which is Donald Trump. And that's all it is. And so they had some real build up to it. They talked about all these people and their reputations. They were trying to get a sympathy for their reputations. But once they started to talk, there was absolutely nothing. Tomorrow it'll continue. I'm predicting that it's going to flop just like it did yesterday. So I don't want to talk too much about it because it's really not too much to talk about. Let me tell you about this. This is how Islamists mark their territory. Will the U.S. go the way of Sweden? It says this: if control over body and space is the most visible sign of Islamists, then it stands to say that hijabs, the veil, mega mosques, and emerging political clout are how Islamists mark their territory. It seems that they have, and I won't read it all to you, it seems that they have a plot. The Jihad is a holy war. Muslims, I've told you this over and over again, but Islam is not a religion. It is a, what? It's a civilization takeover. That's what they want to do. They want to take over civilization, and basically what they want to do is they want to wage jihad. It could be peaceful, and I'll tell you what that means, or a war. Most of them go to war for the jihad, to take countries back. But when it's peaceful, here's what they do. They infiltrate a country, and they infiltrate the laws of that country and the school system of that country. So listen to this article. From hijabs and patriarchy, distortion theology stemming from the most extreme interpretations of Islam, to foreign investments in theological structures. What they're saying is the mosques that are popping up all over America, were popping up in Sweden and Europe, they're not owned by people that are in America. These are owned by conglomerates and nations like Saudi Arabia. If you want to build a church, you get a group of people together and they take their offerings and their tithes and they build a church. That's not how a mosque is built in America. This is a strategic buildup. Muslims become a source of pride for some political parties, we see that love the victimization narratives. Yemeni Swiss political scientist Ilham Manea shares and says, whenever Islamists become active, they start by targeting women. The easiest, most visible, and most successful means of control, however, is the hijab, the Islamic veil. If you went to Dearborn, Michigan today, you're going to see 1,000 mosques around Dearborn, a suburb of Detroit. And you're going to see women in hijabs. And so it goes on. The North American Islamist Trust, which is a foreign-financed Muslim Brotherhood front, according to the FBI, holds the titles to over 325 properties in 42 states, and the deeds for about 1/4 of the mosques in the entire United States. The Chicago Tribune documented how moderate Muslims witnessed an Islamic transformation of the Mosque Foundation in Bridgeview, Illinois, that included giving the deed to the Muslim Brotherhood. The government of Turkey built a 15-acre, $100 million mega mosque in Laham, Maryland. When Turkey's Prime Minister Erdogan visited the site on May 15th, the state of Maryland was officially represented at the event by its Secretary of State, John McDonough. So they're bringing money into it, building these mosques, and of course, America's buying it hook, line, and sinker. The event was also attended by the leaders of 2 U.S. Muslim Brotherhood nations, the president of the Islamic Circle of North America and the president of Islamic Society of North America. The question is, why does the promotion of hijabs and representations of Muslim women or the mushrooming rate of foreign-funded mosques continue to be ignored by the public at large as a risk factor for Islamization? One reason is the inclusion of Islamist personalities and movements into mainstream politics. How many of you know the Squad? In America, we have seen the emergence of 2 such prominent politicians, Ilhan Omar, who is aligned with the Muslim Brotherhood, by the way, and Recep Erdogan, she's also aligned with him, huge Muslim Brotherhood founder and funder, and Recep Tayyip, whose closest political allies include supporters of the Iranian proxy group Hezbollah, which is a terrorist group. So looking for new voters, socialists in Sweden turned to Islamists, and the Islamists came in. So basically what the Islamists do is they take advantage of the vulnerability of nations. What they did is they came in, they got the socialism in Sweden was willing to welcome them to get the votes, and as they came in, they brought in their mosques, they brought in their foreign money to build their mosques. The women were subjugated and put into hijabs, and they had almost like a non-binary binary Sharia law. That's exactly what's happening in America. Their plot is working in America. And now these communities are insisting on their own Islamic free schools that is costing the Swedish government $40 million in taxpayer money over 20 years. And here's the kicker. One of these schools has a radical imam and 6 returning ISIS warriors working there as teachers. They still work there as teachers. Radical ISIS imams that were arrested in Sweden were just let out of prison because international European Union law says you can't deport them as they can be tortured in their homeland. Forget the fact that they've tortured others. It says, as we know, across Europe and the United States, attempts by Muslims and concerned non-Muslims to have a conversation on these issues are quickly labeled Islamophobic. We can't say anything about it. We're Islamophobic. It's hate speech. In other cases, simply by raising these issues, a person can be tagged as a hater. It's a great example of how Islamists mark territory in the political scheme, and they are gobbling up places in America. Here he is, Bernie, burn down America. That's what I like to call him. At a rally for presidential candidate Bernie Sanders, who, by the way, is dropping fast in the polls. He doesn't have a chance. On Sunday, Ilhan Omar told a cheering crowd that she was excited to campaign for a candidate who will fight against Western imperialism and fight for a just world. It's really kind of ironic that she said something like that, because basically what's happening in our world, whether you start with Hong Kong or whether you start with, or you go to Beijing, or if you go to some places even in Iran, there are freedom fighters that are there. There are people that are looking for democracy, and they're being subjugated by their own countries. That's what this article says. They don't say anything about that. They don't say anything about the massacres that are happening in some of these nations that are putting down people who want democracy. We know that right now the protesters have been displaying pictures in Tehran of Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei crossing out his image with thick red lines and beating them with shoes because they have a huge unemployment rate. Iran's not doing anything for them, and neither is Iraqi politicians and militias are harming them tremendously. They have popular mobilization forces whose snipers stationed on rooftops murder protesters. Over recent days, hundreds of demonstrators have been killed, and you don't hear anything about Bernie Sanders or Omar saying anything about that. A 1,500-word New York Times piece on Lebanon wasn't much better. 6 sentences from the end. Hezbollah is mentioned as one of the country's leading Shiite parties, but they are running that country, amassing almost 150,000 rockets on the Lebanese Israeli border. But you don't hear anything about that, even though the people are starving to death. Lebanon used to be an extremely beautiful place. I just showed last night about Tyre. Tyre's in Lebanon. It used to be an amazing city. It is in rubbles almost today because of this extremism that's there. But you don't hear Bernie Sanders saying anything about that. He wants to stop American imperialism. America is the only thing that can help those nations. And so it's kind of ironic to see something that's actually pathetic. Let me give you this one. And this one I have some personal information about tonight too. This says, new home Amazon experience centers are really Amazon home surveillance centers. For those of you who missed the good old days when government spies used to bug people's homes, I give you Amazon experience centers. New homes pre-equipped with a mind-boggling array of listening devices. Amazon Experience Center's tagline, try smart home devices in person and see how Amazon can simplify your everyday. It is less about simplification and more about home surveillance. As NPR notes, builders like Lennar Homes have pre-installed Amazon smart devices in at least 45,000 new homes this year alone, in Miami and San Francisco being some of the larger hubs for the smart home developments. In the good old days of Cold War espionage, spies relied on putting listening devices in a couple of things like phones and lamps. How many of you ever saw a James Bond movie? He checks the phones and the lamps. But now people are purchasing Lennar's new homes that come equipped with numerous monitoring devices in every room. Amazon's and Lennar's slogan is, welcome to your connected home, and everything's included, and every room's connected, is really about collecting personal data and information about everyone that lives in or visits that home. 31 ways smart home devices monitor families. Smart home surveillance devices know when you drive or walk up to your home. They know when you open your garage door. They know when you open your front door. They know when you turn on your lights. They know when you turn on and use your thermostat. They know when you turn on your HVAC vents. They know when you open your refrigerator. They know when you make coffee. They know when you use your oven. They know when you use your toaster. They know when you use your microwave oven. They know when you use your grill. They know when you use your crock pot. They know when you use your blender. They know when you use a salt shaker. They know devices like smart plugs turn household devices into smart devices. They know when you turn on your faucets. They know when you go to the toilet. That's upsetting. They know when you use your bathtub. They know when you brush your teeth. They know when you brush your hair. They know when you trim your beard. They know when you do laundry. They know when you vacuum your home. They know when you use your water sprinklers. They know when your kids ride their bicycles or scooters. They know every conversation that's going on inside your home. They know what your kids are watching on the internet. They know what you watch on television or what music you listen to. And they know that who they are taking videos of pictures of, and they can identify your pets. It's pretty amazing. You know, I read this and I took this article, I guess it was Tuesday I took it, and Wednesday I had to go to Lowe's to find a faucet. I was looking with my daughter for her house. She's renovating her kitchen. And I suggest you do this. Go to Lowe's, and in the faucet department for kitchen faucets, there is one that has 4 buttons on it. How many have seen these? Go there. You need to see it. This is a smart faucet. You touch one button, it's Alexa, and it comes on. There's a speaker there, lights up blue, and it says, do you want 8 ounces of water or 10 ounces of water? You press another one that says, I'm pouring you now a cup of water. You press another one that says, how much of water do you want right now? And you press another one, it says, it's voice activated. That sounds like it's really convenient. It sounds like, wow, we won't be wasting water. But they're actually 2 things. They're controlling your water, first of all. I mean, you can't get any water you don't want. And secondly, what's talking to you is also listening to you. And so this is what smart homes are about, one item at a time. Now let me go on and say what this article says. Amazon congratulates people for buying a Lennar designed connected home, where all smart home products in your new home will be activated and supported by Amazon and voice controlled by Alexa. Having Amazon control almost every facet of a family's daily life is a privacy disaster waiting to happen, as NPR warned. Theron Smith works in tech. He says that's how he knows the risks. It's not just cameras, even light switches can capture information. The data is not just sitting there, just empty, he says. Somebody's going to look at it and leverage it. Try to turn on profit, or try to create an ad, or try to create some revenue. Imagine the vast amounts of data that smart homes and smart devices will collect on every family member over a 5 to 10 year span. Amazon's web service will have access to terabytes of data on each family member that can be sold or exploited. Imagine applying for a job in the future and being told you spend too much time playing video games and watching TV. They'll know. Imagine health insurance companies raising your rates because you use your microwave oven too much and don't eat enough healthy foods. They will know. Listen, these are a few examples of the dangers of Amazon Home. Imagine such information being merged into something like China's social credit system, where every action is recorded and scrutinized to make you comply with the whims of state policy. As a recent Amazon press release warns, today's customers can choose from more than 85,000 Alexa-compatible products designed for every room and outdoor space around their homes, with new brands and devices being added every single week. Now, most people think that's upgrading. Most people think that's pretty cool because it's technology. You are giving away your privacy. You are sharing something that's extremely, extremely private, and they'll know every single thing about you. Listen, if you talk about a government takeover of a nation, let's talk about the Antichrist. He'll know where you are. He'll know where your kids are. He knows everything about you just having one of these smartphones or one smart device, let alone a whole house. Many like to think their home is the last vestige of privacy from which they can shield themselves from the world. The temptation of trading privacy for convenience often wins out, and we have no one to blame but ourselves. And that's absolutely true. Things are heating up in Israel. Matter of fact, planning another trip in probably September to go there. I have a lot of people waiting for it, and it'll probably be safe. I don't think it won't be, but that doesn't mean that things won't heat up. Israel foils a worldwide jihad after killing terrorist mastermind. On Tuesday night, the IDF, the Israeli Defense Forces, launched a surgical airstrike that killed Baha Abu al-Atta, a senior commander for Palestinian Islamic Jihad. Al-Atta's wife was also killed in the blast. Let me tell you what they did. Mossad is probably the best spy agency on the planet, including and past the CIA. Usually what they do is they plant their own operatives in nations that are against them, which is 22 aggressive nations. And so what they did is they fired a missile. It was a strategic strike. They fired a missile and it went into the upstairs bedroom of al-Atta, took him out and his wife. That means that somebody from Mossad must have infiltrated his group and painted that window. You know what they're talking about. They put a laser on it and a guided missile came into it. And so they took him out. This man has been responsible for most of the terror attacks in the last year that have come onto Israel. And so they took him out. They also took another one out, basically that knew him and was part of the operation. At least 150 rockets were fired toward Israel on Tuesday morning. Several Israelis were injured, including an 8-year-old girl who collapsed while running for shelter in Holon. It's amazing. They fire more and more rockets in Israel, and no one ever dies in it. It's really, you can see God's hand. They never see a casualty from these rockets. The Palestinian Islamic Jihad is the second most powerful entity in Gaza. Let me tell you about them. So basically, an occasional partner of Hamas in terrorist attacks. The Islamic Jihad hates Israel. That's their only reason for being, is to push Israel into the sea and make them no more. Hamas, on the other hand, hates Israel, wants to do the same thing, but they are the ones who are ruling the Palestinian Authority. So they kind of tread lightly. When they want to throw rockets in Israel, they partner with Jihad. And so they use them as a proxy to do that. And Israel knows all about that. So Israel is on the front line against Islamic Jihad, fighting a war that is intended to arrive at America and Europe. It's not supposed to just be there. Coupled the fact with radical Islamists believe that the last war, on their Armageddon, they believe that when they start an all-out world war, that's what they want to do. I don't think they bombed them. They don't think that they bombed the trade towers because they just wanted to have a one-off. No, they wanted to start a world war because they believe if a world war starts, then their imam, who's been hidden since the 11th century in a cave, which I wonder why he's in a cave, but he's been hidden there, he's going to come out and he's going to be able to be that Mahdi, that savior that's there. So they want to start that war. It says it was approved by the Brotherhood's Shura Council, and you're going to hear about the Muslim Brotherhood tonight in Psalm 54, which Obama, by the way, backed over Hosni Mubarak, who is more a Westerner. He backed them. It was the first, and no Americans didn't know it, but he was backing a terrorist organization, the Muslim Brotherhood, to lead Egypt. And so Obama accelerated their hatred towards America. And so they have a manifesto that describes the first step in global jihad is as settlement, the process in which Islam and the Muslim Brotherhood become part of a host country. And you are watching it. We have some representatives in Congress. We have some spots in, I just read you the article before. We have some spots in America that are being taken over by Islamists. And I'm not talking about Islam being a peaceful religion. I know a lot of friends in Israel that are Islamic. A lot of them are very peaceful. This is not. And they're like nominal Christians. How many know what I'm talking about? A nominal Christian, you can be born Christian. That doesn't mean you're practicing. But when you have a jihadist and you have somebody who's practicing it, they're going to infiltrate nations, and they're doing that in America, and nobody's paying attention. Matter of fact, if we say anything about it, basically we're haters. So we're watching it happen. Let me give you another article that's related to that one came out. Israel targeted assassination sends a double message. The Israeli missile that blasted through senior Islamic Jihad terrorist Baha Abu al-Atta's Gaza bedroom window at 4 a.m. How would you like to be woken up by that? Or not woken up, on Tuesday morning may have killed the man and his wife, but it also sent a broader message to Hamas and Iran. While officials insisted this was a one-off operation, and Israel does not intend to return to a campaign of targeted assassination, it also demonstrates to Hamas that Israel is still perfectly capable of obtaining detailed intelligence and carrying out a precision strike. According to Israel's defense establishment, the Islamic Jihad commander was responsible for the majority of the attacks emanating from Gaza in the last year. In regards to the political situation, Israel was left with no choice but to eliminate him at this point. And by the way, I saw a picture of it today of a man standing in the crater that missile had created. So Israel means business. They know exactly what's going on. And talking about war, this came out this week when some of our secrets came to light. World War III hell. A nuclear war between America, Russia, and China would kill billions, and almost did. Listen to this, it just came out. Bomb them into the Stone Age. Ex-Air Force General Curtis LeMay is reported to have once urged as a way of defeating North Vietnam during the Vietnam War. U.S. nuclear war plans called for the destruction of the Soviet Union and China as viable societies, according to a document revealed recently by the nonprofit National Security Archive. The document in question pertains to the Single Integrated Operation Planner, SIOP, which governs the numerous war plans and their associated options that govern how America would fight a nuclear war. In June 1964, senior military leaders, including Air Force Chief of Staff LeMay, were sent a staff review of the current SIOP. The report included questions and answers regarding the various nuclear targeting options. These range from attacks on enemy nuclear and conventional forces while minimizing collateral damage to enemy cities, to attacking cities as well as military forces on purpose. Listen to this one. The latter option would have been in order to destroy the will and ability of the Sino-Soviet bloc to wage war, remove the enemy from the category of a major industrial power, and assure a post-war balance of power favorable to the United States. In other words, wipe them off the map. So we had plans in 1964 to totally obliterate China and totally obliterate the Soviet Union. I'm thankful it didn't happen, but it's pretty scary to know that it could have. Let me give you this one, and this is a little bit technical, so I'm going to do my best in being able to explain it to you. Iran now enriching uranium at 5%, claims it can go up to 60%. So we've heard about enriching uranium, we've heard about centrifuges. How many don't know anything about that? Come on, raise your hand. We don't. We don't know what that means. What does it mean? So I'm going to explain it to you tonight the best I can. So let me read it first. Iran said on Saturday that it is now enriching uranium to 5% and has a capacity for up to 60%. After a series of steps back from its commitments under the 2015 nuclear accord, Tehran also slammed Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, saying it was his biggest lie that Iran seeks nuclear weapons. That is not the biggest lie. Iran seeks nuclear weapons. They're a nation that's a rogue nation. Israel has been nuclear since 1981. It has kept that area in check because of a deterrent having a nuclear weapon. They've not used any nuclear weapons, but they have them. And so Tehran wants one. Iran wants one terribly bad. So Atomic Energy Organization of Iran spokesman Behrouz Kamalvandi said at a press conference in Tehran that the organization has the possibility to produce 5%, 20%, and 60%, and has this capacity added that currently the need is for 5%. Now, in the 2015 nuclear deal that Obama signed, said that it can only enrich it to 3.15%. Sent them millions of dollars to do that. They broke it from the beginning. Trump was absolutely right to come out of it. So let me tell you what's happening. Uranium is needed. Actually, U-235 atom of uranium is needed. I'm trying to get technical and not technical so you can follow this. It's needed for a nuclear weapon, to put on top of a nuclear warhead. It's needed. And so it's very difficult to get. Although uranium is extremely plentiful in the earth, it's called U-238. Now, U-235 is an isotope that's lighter than U-238. And so what they have to do is they have to put them in centrifuges. A centrifuge is as large as a man. It's a tube. There's many of them. And they put them in something that spins extremely fast. And when it spins that fast, those tubes go vertical. And what happens is, or horizontal, and what happens is it spins the heavy atoms, the U-238, to the walls. It spins the inside. In the inside is left the lighter one, which is the 232. That's the one that's nuclear. The rest is not. They take that out. They were allowed to do that only 3.5% of any U-238. Now they're saying they're going to do it to 60%, which means this. It means that it would take them at that point at 3.15, take them about 6 to 8 years to make a nuclear weapon if that's the way they were going. They're saying they're using it for electricity. They're not. Now it's going to take them less than a couple months if they go to 60%. So this is why when we hear about centrifuges, when we hear about the Bosher nuclear plant, these are all looking to gear up to have a nuclear weapon. If Iran gets a nuclear weapon, they will drop it on Israel. How many of you know that God has a protection on Israel? So when you read those things, sometimes it doesn't mean anything to us. We just hear about enrichment, we hear about centrifuges, but I boiled it down the best way I possibly can so you can, how many understood it? So that's what's happening, and it's happening right now, and it's scary. And so President Trump knows that they went past 3.15%. He had intelligence to know that. He took us out a nuclear deal so that they don't still get money to continue to build their reactors and build their centrifuges. It's very smart because now that'll slow down the process of extracting 60%. Had he stayed with that, they would have got to that nuclear bomb very, very quick. And so now you know the logic of why he did that. The rest of the world knows it that has anything to know about it. They'll know it, but they're not agreeing. They're not saying anything about it. So I wanted you to know that. Let me give you a little bit about religion. This is too many to count. The global persecution of Christians. Today is it was actually yesterday, International Day of Prayer for the Persecuted Church. Discussing this day's significance, Vernon Brewer, the CEO and founder of World Help, a Christian humanitarian organization, wrote this: "It's easy to go about our lives and forget that in places like Nigeria, Iran, North Korea, being a Christian can often lead to death. After all, for the most part, persecution for our faith isn't something most of us face. But I can't forget," he says, "the believers I've met in Iraq and China and North Korea border. I can't forget their scars or their haunted eyes and their horrific stories. The more I travel, the more I see that in many countries, Christian persecution is the worst that it's ever been. Statistics bear out the grim assertion. 4,136 Christians were killed for faith-related reasons so far this year. Also, that's an average of 11 Christians killed every day just for their faith, by the way. Additionally, 3,000 Christians were detained without trial, arrested, sentenced, and imprisoned and 1,500 churches and Christian buildings were attacked. The report further states, they read to this statistic, that more than 245 million Christians around the world are currently, right now, suffering from persecution. I had one guy tell me, listen, I think we're going to go through the tribulation because we haven't suffered yet, and I think we really need to suffer. I think that's part of Scripture. And I said, you are America. You're 5% of the world's population. Christians are suffering in our world. They are going through persecution. So typically women fare worse. In many places they experience a double persecution. One for being a Christian and one for being a woman. As for specific numbers, at least 6 women every day are raped, sexually harassed, or forced into marriage to a Muslim man under the threat of death for their Christian faith. And who's doing all this persecution? 89% of it comes from Islam. And so we're watching something happen that's really kind of horrific. They're actually calling it a genocide. Christians are being slaughtered all over our world. Boko Haram, an Islamic organization in Africa, basically has done a lot of it. And Christian numbers are lessening in all these Middle East countries. Christian numbers in Palestine are below 1.5%. They used to be very, very high. It declined in Syria from 1.7 million Christians in 2011 to below 450,000. And in Iraq, Christian numbers have slumped from 1.5 million before 2003, below 120,000 today. Countries like Algeria, Egypt, Iran, Iraq, Syria, Saudi Arabia, situation of Christians and other minorities has reached an alarming stage. And if you go to Israel, Bethlehem used to be 52% Christian, 52%. Today, Bethlehem is less than 6% Christian. So we're watching them flee that Middle East, and because we see this persecution coming. Let me give you a little bit more moral decay. I hate telling you about these, but I'm going to. This one, I don't have the article because I used it last night. This is Moloch. That's the god Moloch. I've been to the Colosseum many times in Rome, and when you go to the Colosseum, last time I went to the Colosseum, I overheard a guide telling his group that not one single Christian was alive, not one single Christian was killed in this arena. That is a huge lie. That's all they did was kill Christians. Historian after historian tells us about the gruesomeness of their killings. Now, there's only one way in. If you can see this gate right here, that's the only way into the Colosseum, by the way, in Rome. That's that gate. You got to go there. This was put up right in front of that gate. Now, let me tell you a couple things about this. It's Moloch. If you know anything about Moloch, he's mentioned in Leviticus. God forbade the children of Israel to ever go and sacrifice to Moloch. Moloch, they would take babies, they would heat up his belly. They would take babies after it was heated up, it would be bronze, they heat it up to glowing red. They placed the babies in the bellies, and basically right above the belly was the mouth. That mouth had a horn. And as the babies would scream, they would go down the valley. They would do it in the hidden valley, and they would scream. That's the god Moloch. They have erected it in the Colosseum. Here is the real problem, and I'm saying it so that it can go all over our nation and around the world. This is done by the pagan pope that we have. Let me tell you why. Because the Colosseum is owned by the Vatican. And they can't do anything there without the Pope's permission. So I've been telling you about this Pope over and over again. I'm going to tell you tonight, I'm going to use the first time I'm going to use the words, he is a pagan Pope. I don't care how much he talks about Christianity, I don't care how much he talks about anything else. He's trying to join all the religions together, and he's worshiping false gods. And so we have proof positive that this man, if he's not the false prophet, he is hailing the cab, the Uber, he's opening the door and paying the fare. So just so you know that. All right, let me go a little bit further. If that's not clear to everybody out there that wants me to write me letters, let me tell you again, pagan pope. All right, let me give you one more time. This is happening. This is Rainbow Wars. This is students suspended for hate after opposing LGBT rainbow poppy. 17-year-old student Natalie Salaberry of Manitoba, Canada, decided to take matters into her own hands after LGBT supporters and teachers at her school, Stonewall Collegiate, began to circulate the idea of wearing rainbow poppies to show LGBT solidarity this Remembrance Day. It's actually their Veterans Day. They call it Remembrance Day. In an interview with the Post-Millennial, Natalie says she disagreed with the decision to change the traditional red and black poppy used to honor Canadian veterans during Remembrance Day holiday. I typed up papers on a computer, printed them off, and taped them up in the halls. The printed papers contain quotes from news stories and people on social media Natalie had collected of individuals expressing their criticism of the rainbow poppy. Some of the quotes in the paper included, quote, "Never seen something so disrespectful in all my days. What does LGBT have to do with the war anyway?" Another one, "Red represents blood, black represents widows and loved ones. Green represents land and blood was spilled on. Never change the poppy." So that's why they had those red and black poppies. Another one, you've got a whole month dedicated to LGBT community, but the people who legitimately made a difference and died so we can live decent lives have one day. You don't need a poppy, you just clearly want attention. Another one day to remember the real heroes. How about we don't make it about your sexuality for once? Natalie says she was trying to express her beliefs and opinions on the matter, but as soon as she put up their flyers, teachers tore them down, and they had her report to the principal's office where she was accused of hate speech and endangered the physical safety of a group of individuals. Natalie had attempted to record the conversation with her phone, wanting to show her parents what was happening. When the principal saw her cell phone was snatched away, and she was told there would be consequences if she posted about the suspension on social media or went to the press. So guess what she did? Immediately went to the press. And so I asked why. She said, why am I being suspended and punished for expressing my feelings? And they said, everybody's entitled to their own beliefs, opinions, and way of life. So I asked, why am I not? Natalie will not be allowed to return to school until after Remembrance Day, and students who posted on the school's Facebook page in protest have had their comments deleted. The Royal Canadian Legion official position, that's their army really, is that altering the poppy is a sign of disrespect. The poppy is the sacred symbol of remembrance and should not be defaced in any way. So here's the deal. The deal is the LGBTQ community and all those leftist groups want to say everything they want to say about themselves, but they want to silence us. My Wednesday night, I have a businessman that's there, and I'll share this. He's not here tonight. He goes on Wednesday night. And he has a truck, and his truck has comments about faith and about conservative things. Well, he got a nasty letter from somebody. It's untrustful, by the way. And they said all kinds of things about him, talked about how he's a Trump lover and just cursing all through the line, and then they signed it anonymous. You know why? Because they're cowards. All they want to do is go on social media and tell you how bad you are. You have an opinion and you have a right to share your opinion. I said this before. Just because somebody came out of the closet, I'm not going in one. Ain't going to happen. By the way, this picture is, I'm going to give you my opinion here again. This picture is not only disturbing, it's disgusting. Now listen. The transgender movement tactics are predictable, but it's still breathtaking to watch. I'm so glad my back's to that and I don't have to see it. It's still breathtaking to watch biology get transformed into hate speech so swiftly. First, the LGBT movement pushed for the acceptance of their chosen terminology. Progressive politicians, the media, and the entertainment industry climbed on board without a single question. Everybody acquiesced. With a framework in place and the premises legislated, the real work began, rooting out heretics. Some of you know I'm a heretic. And so are you. Listen. The latest victim is 45-year-old Lindsay McCarthy Calvert, who until recently served as the spokesperson for Doula UK. Calvert, who represented the National Organization for Birthing Coaches, she's a birthing coach, and worked as a doula herself for 6 years, that word means, found herself a target after posing a series of obvious truths on social media. It started when the Cancer Research UK kowtowed to the trans activists and removed the word women from their pap smear test campaign. Under pressure from trans activists, instead stating that cervical cancer screening was relevant for everyone aged 25 to 64 with a cervix. I don't have a cervix. Last time I checked, every woman I know does have a cervix. Why can you not say a woman has a cervix? Did you not go to biology class in 10th grade? Calvert understandably was irritated by this and posted a picture of a woman somersaulting underwater on her Facebook page with the caption, "I am not a cervix owner. I am not a menstruator. I am not a feeling. I am not defined by wearing a dress and lipstick. I'm a woman and an adult human female. Women birth all people." Like, you have to tell people this? They make up half the population, but less than a third of the seats in the House of Commons are occupied by us, obviously, in England. Calvert's impeccable logic was beside the point, and she was promptly accused of absolutely disgusting language and reminded ominously that you seem to be forgetting that not only women birth children. Yes, only women birth children. That statement isn't only fundamentally wrong, it's as stupid as saying, don't forget, dogs are cats too. It's the same logic. It's the exact same logic. Within days, more than 20 transgender activists began petitioning Doula UK, demanding that McCarthy Calvert be disciplined for violating the organization's policies. Specifically, the one that asked members not to post anything that our colleagues, clients, and affiliates would find offensive. What about us? According to the trans inquisitors, Calvert has been trans exclusionary for saying that only women had babies, as in their view, men can give birth as well. You can view it that way. They don't. They also objected to her description of a woman as an adult human female. Come on, I mean, where are we living? I just don't understand this. So they buckled immediately, and they removed her from her role as spokesperson and launched a 4-month investigation. Calvert was told that she would be suspended unless she deleted the Facebook post, and she did so under protest, resigning from Doula UK immediately thereafter. I'm angry and I'm sad, she noted. I was effectively ostracized for saying I'm a woman, and so are my clients. Consider what happened here for a moment. Calvert, a mother of 4, who works with pregnant women, was told that she had no right to say that what a woman is, and was disciplined for daring to point out that childbearing and birthing is the purview of women, not men. We know that men do not give birth. How many of you know that? Amen. Is there anybody here that thinks men give birth? Although women claiming to be men might, and yet to say this now comes with professional consequences. As trans activists continue to colonize corporations and professions, and they are colonizing them, many people find themselves faced with a stark choice, and this is true. Believe the big lie and parrot the required deceits, or get thrown out. And that's exactly what's happening. Let me give you this one. This is under Planet. Are you ready for a catastrophically cold winter? Ramifications beyond your heating bills. So we've been hearing about global warming and climate change, and we've been hearing about it for years and years and years. Al Gore, when he did An Inconvenient Truth, that pathetic movie that he put out, said that we had 10 years left on planet Earth 25 years ago. So I'm not really sure if he can't count or he's just not smart. Maybe it's the latter. Experts are warning us that this will be a freezing, frigid winter. And even though the official beginning of winter is still over a month away, it already feels like that in much of the country right now. Over the next several days, it will literally feel like it's mid-January in much of the central and eastern portions of the United States. Many areas will be hit by temperatures that are 30 degrees below normal, and heavy snow is expected in some areas of the Midwest. Unfortunately, the bitter cold weather is coming at a very bad time for corn farmers. Just get through this and we'll tell you a little bit more. According to the latest USDA crop progress report, only 52% of the corn in the middle of the country has been harvested. So about half of the corn is still out there, and these extraordinary low temperatures could potentially be absolutely devastating. In essence, this cold front threatens to put an exclamation point on an absolutely horrific year for U.S. farmers. According to the National Weather Service, we could possibly see 170 potential daily record cold high temperatures broken in the next 3 days. Of course, this is not the first wave of record cold weather to come rolling through the season. During the month of October, a couple of major blizzards roared through the Midwest, and countless new cold temperatures and records were established. And unfortunately, we should expect a lot more bitter weather in months. There's predictions that excessive snowfall will be the most noteworthy part of this season. So why is it happening? Does anybody have any idea why it's happening? Before those of you that went to Wednesday night study. Sunspots. How many times have I told this group and the other groups that the reason we have any global warming is because the sun has an excessive amount of sunspots. It's called the solar maximum. When there's a lot of sunspots, there's a lot of ejections of coronal mass that comes from the sun. Those ejections warm up the atmosphere. It's 93 million miles away, which is a short distance in astrological terms. So we get warm. The world gets warm. When there's a minimum, solar minimum of sunspots, we get cold. Climate warming is because of the sun. It has nothing to do with the human footprint. There are more cows flatulating in America than there are humans that are here. Talk about CO2 and methane. Just want to let you know. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm going to tell you how it is. Can I do that? Amen. All right. So it's a lie. It's been a big lie. Why? Because global elitists want to have that money and want to bring those nations together so they can use more money of the world to do whatever they're trying to do. So listen to what's going on here. During a solar minimum, first article I've ever read about it recently, during a solar minimum, solar activity drops to very low levels. And that tends to mean lower temperatures on Earth. Earlier this year, a panel of experts gathered to discuss the current solar minimum, and they came to the conclusion that it could last for years. If the panel's correct, already low sunspot counts will reach nadir, which means a peak, sometimes between July 2019 and September 2020, followed by a slow recovery towards a solar maximum in 2023 and 26. And you'll know when a solar maximum is because every 11 years we have one. It goes from solar minimum to solar maximum. And every 11 years, grasshoppers swarm. They swarm in the solar maximum. There are others that believe that we have now entered a grand solar minimum, such as the one that our planet experienced several hundred years ago. That one was known as the Maunder minimum, and it resulted in a little ice age. The extreme example happened between 1645 and 1715, when the normal 11-year, there it is, sunspot cycle vanished. This period, called the Maunder minimum, was accompanied by bitterly cold winters in American colonies. Fishing settlements in Iceland and Greenland were abandoned. Icebergs were seen near the English Channel, and the canals of Venice froze. It was a time of great hardship. Ultimately, the longer winters and shorter summers during the Maunder Minimum resulted in famine all over the globe and multitudes ending up perishing. The Maunder Minimum is the most famous cold period in the Little Ice Age, and I knew about this when I was in Penn State studying arts. I remember seeing pictures of the Thames River in London frozen over, and it was by an artist that lived during that time, during that Little Ice Age, they called it. Temperatures plummeted in the Little Ice Age. In Europe, the growing season became shorter by more than a month. The number of snowy days increased from a few to 20 or 30. The ground froze down several feet. Alpine glaciers advanced all over the world, and Al Gore's telling us that the glaciers are warming and they're all melting. Well, get ready, they're coming back. Glaciers in the Swiss Alps encroached on farms and buried villages. Tree lines in the Alps dropped. Seaports were blocked by sea ice that surrounded Iceland and Holland for about 20 miles. Wine grape harvests diminished, and cereal grain harvests failed, leading to mass famines. The Thames River, it's what I just told you about, and canals and rivers of the Netherlands froze over during the winter. They were ice skating on the Thames River. The population of Iceland decreased by about a half. In parts of China, warm weather crops had been grown for centuries were abandoned. In North America, early European settlers experienced exceptionally severe winters. So far in 2019, you ready for this? There have been more than 200 days without a single sunspot on the sun. That's unbelievable. I've had astronomy classes most of my life in colleges and even beyond that. I've studied it. And there's not a day that I remember that I didn't see sunspots, even in a solar minimum. But we've had 200 days so far that doesn't have a sunspot. So a cold winter's coming, and it's going to last for a long, long time. And let me just tell you something. This is the caveat. This should kill any rhetoric from global climate change artists, and so hopefully that'll be stopped. I want to give you one weird piece in the news. Can I do that? Now I got to tell you this. I gave it last night, and everybody looked at me like I didn't say anything. They just looked at me like they were like this. So even if you don't get it, like laugh or do something, bump somebody, make me feel good tonight. You ready? A woman bumped into her dead ex-boyfriend after he faked his death. An Australian woman has shared her bizarre story of how her ex-boyfriend faked his own death to avoid paying his $700 debt back to her. It may sound like something out of a bad rom-com, but this is exactly what happened to a young Australian woman, Rachel. What could possibly warrant someone faking their death? Did he get mixed up with some bad people? Was he on the run from police? Well, absolutely not. He just didn't want to pay the $700 back from her. Rachel was 18 when she met 21-year-old Alistair. They'd been dating for about 3 months, and Alistair came home one night and he had hurt his hand. And he said it was not his fault. He got in a fight. His injury meant he couldn't work for some time, so Rachel lent him $1,000. He actually paid back $300, but he broke up with her a few months later. Shortly after, he went silent and his belongings started disappearing from the share house he lived in. The initial story, he had gone to rehab in Queensland. He was a chef, by the way. But just as Alistair's story seemed to be falling apart, Rachel received a call from a friend saying that he died. His mom had told his friends that he had been murdered because he owed money to his bike gang. Now his mom's in on it. It sounds stupid in retrospect, Rachel says, but you don't have reason to question it. If somebody asked, if I called you and told you my mom died, you wouldn't be like, give me a death certificate, so I didn't do that. It wasn't until 2 months later that Rachel found out it was a lie. Rachel was at a restaurant with a friend and knew her ex-boyfriend's brother worked there, so she asked the waitress if he was around. To her surprise, the waitress said no, he wasn't there, but his brother was. The man that she said was dead. After the initial shock, she asked the waitress if he could come out and see her. The manager then came out and asked Rachel and her friend to leave the restaurant. After finding out that her ex-boyfriend wasn't actually dead, Rachel decided to go to the police and see if there was any way she can get her money back. I was basically told by the police that it was my word against his, and that I'd ever given him the money. Rachel received a text message from Alistair's mom to complain that she had made a scene at the restaurant and cost her son his job. What about her lying to her and telling her her son was dead? Wait. After that night, Rachel decided to give up on getting answers for the money. She said, that's it. No, I'm going to put it behind me. 2 years went by, and then she bumped into him in a different restaurant. He recognized her immediately and started up a conversation. He said, hey, long time no see. She asked him about the money he owed her, and then he pretended to act confused and claimed he didn't know her and wanted to call the police on her. Ladies, please, 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 if you're single, be careful who you date. Please. That's in the news for tonight. I'm going to ask the ushers to come forward.